Good morning, everyone. All right, another live stream. Let's do it. I woke up really early today, and even though I'm really tired, I drank a lot of coffee to prepare for this, so we're good to go. Um, Today we've got a few things planned. I'm going to do a little bit of a critique. I'm going to share a job with you guys, and then I'm also going to, of course, start my live stream with another one of my film cameras. So this here is my Canon 1V. If you are an event photographer and you also like shooting film, you absolutely should consider getting one of these cameras. Forget all the specs. The biggest, most important thing about this camera is that it can take any of my EOS lenses. So any pro lens you might happen to have, you can use on this camera. Now, beyond that simple fact, because there are a lot of cameras you can do that with, and remember, it's all about lens quality. That's what's going to really produce a great image, your exposure, of course, a film stock, all has more bearing on the image you're able to produce than the actual camera. However, if you're looking for an incredible user experience and you want to shoot film like a pro, you can use this. The Canon 1V is seriously an incredible camera for that. So that is my Canon 1V. All right, good morning, Doug. I'm glad you made it. G, glad you made it. Chris, glad you made it. As always, please do consider giving me a like, a thumbs up, because then maybe we will get our audience can expand a bit if the YouTube algorithm thinks we've got a good thing going here. All right. So let's start with the critique. It's going to be a bit quick. Unfortunately, AC, the person who sent me these, can't make the live stream, but they did ask me a few questions that they were hoping I would cover. So I'm going to pull those up, and I'll try to address them as I do my critique, but some maybe won't even require the critique to kind of explore it. I'm going to use this critique because he didn't give me too much guidance in exactly what he's looking for. He had some specific questions, but it's really helpful when I'm able to, when someone says, this is what I'm working on, this is what I'm trying to achieve, and then I can kind of work around that. As a photography instructor, I'm always using photographs as opportunities to teach different lessons. So what can we get out of this discussion about this photo? It doesn't always have to be about, this is my feedback to you, this is what you need to do specifically. So when you're watching a critique, if I'm critiquing your work, keep that in mind, that I might not be specifically speaking to you, but I see an opportunity to talk about something. Okay, so a few of the questions we have. Addressing the hot topic of the day, do you think film is a current fad that within 10 years, okay, do I think the film fad will die out within 10 years due to a lack of equipment and chemistry, black and white, either or both? Okay, I do think it is a fad, but that doesn't mean there are not valid reasons to shoot film. I wouldn't be shooting it because it's a fad. I'm so anti doing what's cool, I have been my whole life, that it's just as bad to not do something because everyone's doing it if you enjoy it. So I'm not going to stop shooting film. But that said, I have always been like anti-fad my whole life, even as a kid. I've always wanted to do things differently. When a teacher would give me an assignment, I always thought about how I could approach it different than everyone else. Sometimes I got a fail because of it, if it didn't pay off. Some teachers appreciated my creativity. So I don't think the film fad is going anywhere, the resurgence in film isn't going anywhere. Will the fad die off? Possibly. Has it hit its peak? I don't even think so. So a lot of my film cameras, I ended up collecting a bunch starting 3 years ago and I was getting them dirt cheap even then, and I kind of resented the way prices were going back then. But now prices have almost doubled, and so a lot of the cameras I was picking up a bunch of, because I was buying, shooting them, and then selling them, have doubled in price. A lot of them have doubled in price. I think there are very valid reasons to shoot film, and mostly I think it's about the experience, but it's like saying, I think like vinyl, it is back. let me know your guys' thoughts in the comments. I don't want to just like talk. So no, I don't think, yes, there is going to be disappearing equipment. I think you can probably keep film, a lot of basically anything that doesn't require electronics. I think those cameras will probably last a very long time, plenty, like your lifetime at the least. I don't know what's going to happen in 100 years, if what we're going to be doing. I've actually hypothesized that film is going to become increasingly popular, even more than it is now, as the ability to produce an image is going to profoundly change. I think within maybe 5 years, we won't even be shooting with still cameras anymore. I think it's going to be about shooting video and then pulling single frames from that when it comes to work. Because if I can just prop a camera on a tripod, and this is disappointing to me as a photographer, don't get me wrong, especially a photographer who's prized himself on having the ability to capture images, like moments. But I think we will have video cameras that we are propping on tripods or pointing in the direction of someone and letting it roll, because you're going to be able to pull a really high quality still frame from it. There will be no compromise in quality at some point. And I think as images get easier and easier to produce, and also as CGI becomes indistinguishable from reality, you will see a lot less photography. I think brands, if they can just CGI something, including the person, why hire an actor? Some people might not agree with me, but I also think some people have a hard time seeing anything outside of their current reality as a possibility. I'm going to disagree with you, G. I don't think it will be an antique typewriter, because people aren't using those. I mean, maybe some writers use them for fun. I really think that we're going to perceive photography as art and not documenting reality as much, because you're going to have better ways to document reality, if that makes sense to you guys. Really curious about other people's thoughts, though, and I don't have the end-all be-all opinion here. But let's go to number 2, and then maybe we'll start looking. Maybe I'll skip the questions that I can then answer while looking at the work. But what film stock development chemistry do you go to, or what combination do you use for what situation? I do have a go-to. My go-to is diaphine, because it's a super simple chemistry to use. You mix diaphine once, it can last over a year. I think my current batch I'm using is probably a year and a half old at least. And basically it works differently than other developers, in which the amount of time and temperature really have an impact on your development. If it's hotter, it would be a shorter development as well. But you can play around with the temperature and development time and dilution to create different results. But in diaphine, pretty much it's a 2-part solution. Part A, 3 minutes, part B, 3 minutes, and then you do your fixer. And no matter what, your development will come out the same. You can't really tweak it. And the cool thing about that is that you can take multiple rolls and throw it in diaphine and develop it super easily without having to worry about time, etc. Diaphine naturally does, this is all non-technical, I'm giving non-technical explanations, but diaphine naturally pushes your film to pretty much its highest speed it can be shot at for the most part. So Tri-X, for example, the manufacturer recommends shooting it at 1600, not 400, and so it will just push it to 1600 no matter what. So if you shoot it at 400, you get really dense negatives, it doesn't work for you. But if you know you're going to develop in diaphine, you can set it to 1600. Or personally, what I like is I like to shoot at 1200 and or 1250. I find it's a safer. It overexposes a little bit, which is preferable. Rodinol is my number 2 that I use, but diaphine is not like Rodinol. I use Rodinol for my fine grain film. So if I'm going to do something like APX, like I have an old stock of APX, what do I have? Is it 25? APX 25 that they don't make anymore. They do make 25 speed films, but not this particular one I have. And I develop that in Rodinal, and I do a stand development where you do agitate in the beginning for a minute, and then you let it sit for an hour. Some people do like not a micro rotation, but a super slow rotation once, and then that's it. And that would be at 30 minutes. And so I do that sometimes. Slow speed films in Rodinal are insanely beautiful. If you're shooting film just for aesthetic value, or if you want that, like, it's such a gradual tonal range. It just hits every shade so beautifully well. It's super fine grain. It's just gorgeous. I do post to my Instagram if you guys want to see my film photography. Some of you maybe have found my personal account, and some maybe have found my professional account, neither of which I update enough. But I'm going to post that in the comments if you guys want to see some of my film photography. I do tag it. If you're curious, I do tag like what film speeds I used and that kind of thing. Oh, sorry, just typing that out. Okay, so I put both of my Instagrams. You guys can check that out. G says, some people still like to use their old typewriters, but I should rephrase. Film cameras will be like classic cars, fountain pens, etc. Small niche that people will enjoy, the rest will not understand. I mean, it's like that now. It's becoming more and more trendy when you have these like what are we calling them again? Influencers shooting film. We have mainstream people shooting film. It gets to a point where everyone's like, no way, and now they're talking about like this is gonna be a weird comparison. I was having a discussion with my girlfriend about a friend of hers who is like very rigid in how they think, very conservative, let's say, and they're talking about psilocybin as a treatment for like depression, etc. And so if this person's talking about magic mushrooms now when it was very fringe only a year ago, it's kind of I see a parallel where now everyone's talking about film photography. So I think that I'm not arguing film photography is gonna like make this comeback and we're gonna all start shooting film instead of digital. I will never shoot film professionally. Let's be clear. I do it for myself when I shoot film on the job, but I'm not gonna show up to a paid gig with my Canon 1V and be like, yeah, I'm just gonna shoot this in film. Like, there's no purpose to that, you know. But what I'm suggesting is that we are going to reevaluate why we make film, why we make images the way we make them. And I think in that process, we're going to see a lot of people returning to film because they're going to realize I'm not taking pictures to just document. These aren't my selfies. Like, hey, here's me in front of the Eiffel Tower. I'm trying to create something. And I like the process of shooting film. And I think people are going to go back to it for that reason. And I don't think I'm the most articulate person, and I might not be actually articulating my point well, but we can keep talking about it, and hopefully I'll become clearer. Okay. So I also have some event photography questions from AC who submitted work, and then we're going to go straight to it. But I'm going to address why did this post twice? Anyway, I'm going to address the event photography questions as I look at some of my work, because we're going to do that too. Okay, let's take a look. So here's our first image. Hi, Aman. Here's our first image, and some of these are clearly film photography photos, and some are not. And I'll be honest, a few I'm not entirely sure, but I'm not like a pixel peeper. You know, I enjoy shooting film. I don't pretend I'm like an expert, and I don't get it. I don't do it to geek out about film. I enjoy the process. So some of these images I'm not 100% sure are film or not. You can kind of see in the bottom, like I do like playing detective. And so, for example, Okay, some are very obviously film. Like this one, I could imagine it being faked, but it's film, I'm pretty sure. But it does say in the title, if you guys look below, it does say positive on the bottom. So that would be the positive of the negative, a film scan. So this is an interesting image for me to critique because a lot of it is going to be subjective, and I need to figure out how to talk about it and parse what's subjective and what's not. First of all, I'm just not a fan of like the gelled look, the 80s kind of gel. If you're not familiar with what a gel is, it's basically like a filter you add to your light to give it a color. So here we have a rim light created by placing a light to camera right behind the subject's left shoulder, and maybe above it. No, it's behind because the brim of the hat would block the light, I think, on the cheek if it were above. I have this bad habit myself. Now, there's no rules of composition, even though traditionally they've been taught as rules of composition. They are guidelines that maybe help you make more aesthetically pleasing images. We can call it that. I don't think rules need to be followed. I think you need to have intention, and it's important if you're following the rules, there is a reason you are following them. Also, let me know, guys, real quick, if my little webcam is blocking the view of the image. I will have to make that adjustment, but there is a big delay on YouTube, so I can't really tell. Let me see. I'm just looking into that. It is blocking the image, so let me fix that for you guys really quick. Hopefully that will improve it. All right, so one of the rules would be a rule of thirds, and it's not always going to be like subject placement. Rule of thirds can sometimes be referring to where the eye line is. And so if we look at this image, our eye line is centered right down the middle. So because of that, we get a lot of head space that really doesn't do much for us. It kind of pulls us away from her because we're able to connect at her eyesight a little bit better, I think, when it's 1/3 of the way. And so what we have here is a non-traditional crop is what I would call it. That's fine, but you should always have that intention. So unfortunately, Andrew's not with us right now and he can't comment on it. But Andrew, if you are doing this intentionally, that's fine. You should ask yourself, why are you doing it the way you're doing it? Why did you choose to center her eye line? Why did you leave that headroom? Did you want to make her feel more isolated? Did you want the environment to almost envelop her rather than bring her eye line closer to us by placing it 1/3 of the way where we could connect with her more than we could with the background? I hope that makes sense. All right, let's take a look at the next image. One thing I've noticed in my own work lately, because I'm thinking about it more, I have the bad habit of centering my images, my subject matter too much in the middle of the frame as well, and not bringing the eye line down to that rule of thirds. And a lot of it is because I am a compulsive refocuser. I'm constantly putting a focus point on the eye and refocusing. The problem is I don't want to deviate too much. I don't like that focus recompose method that we were stuck with a long time ago. My 5D Mark III compared to the Mark II and the Classic did remedy that a bit because you had reliable cross-point focuses, or what do you call those cross-focus points, spread out, but they're still pretty cramped in the middle of the screen. And what happens is if you don't want to deviate or focus and recompose, you end up getting your subject matter too much centered, even if you want the eye line 1/3 of the way. It's an issue I have quite a bit. So here's an image where I wanted to talk options, not preferences or definitively what would be better. But you have some options, and I didn't pull these into Lightroom, so it's going to be harder to demonstrate, but I don't think it's required. I think you guys can follow along. As far as subject placement here goes, we're neither in the middle nor are we rule of thirds. I typically think that having a balanced image overrides all the rules. And if you're looking for aesthetic value, you'll find that rule of thirds, leading lines, negative use of negative space, everything is basically building a balanced image where you might have more subject matter on the left, but it's balanced out by more things happening on the right, etc. That kind of thing. And when you go neither in the middle, I find it a little off-putting when it's not really centered or in the rule of thirds and you're kind of in the middle. But here what we have is, although she is not centered or in the rule of thirds, overall it's pretty well balanced. Like, it doesn't feel like it's an out of balanced image. I still probably would not crop this way. I would, if I'm looking for classic portraiture, I'm probably going to bring the crop down and try to line her eye up at a rule of thirds rather than in that middle again. Because then, again, we have all that headroom. We're cropping at the chest. It's a weird crop, to be honest, if we're looking for traditional. Okay, so this is an interesting image. I think it's digital, again, but made to look somewhat like film. Maybe a little bit. One thing we can look at is we can determine what our light source is really a few ways. One, we can see it's a very harsh lighting setup. And not just because we have dramatic shadows. I mean, you can have soft light, but have light and shadow. That's not what hard light does. What hard light does is you don't really have that gradation in your shadows. It's pretty abrupt. It's going to be a hard line. So if we look, because we have sort of a Rembrandt light, that shadow cast by her nose is very definitive. It's very, like, there's no gradation at all. It's just, and so that is one way to indicate that we know it's a hard light. We can look at the catch light in the eyes and determine what kind of light was used. It looks like it was a hard light source from pretty far away because the specular highlight is pretty small. It looks like there were actually two light sources. One probably might not be that relevant in the exposure. It might be mostly determined by one key light. Here's another image. Again, you're centering right in the middle and allowing for all this headroom. I would have been able to connect a bit more with her without that negative space if you just brought that eye line or that crop down so that the eye line's more rule of thirds. So here we have a film photograph. It'd be interesting. I don't really care about what camera you're using, but it would be interesting to know, because then we could figure out why, if you're suffering from the same issue I suffer from, and that is not having a wide enough net with your autofocus points. It could be that. This is shot on film, and I'm fairly certain. I don't know. I've never really participated in any experiment where I'm trying to determine if something's film or not. But we do see a little bit of dust there, if you guys can see my mouse. I hope you can. There's a little bit of dust there and a little bit of dust there. And I don't think that scanning out filters are getting sophisticated enough or thoughtful enough to add fake dust. That'd be interesting. But I do like this image. But again, it's a bad crop if you're going for traditional. Clearly, this one is shot in film as well, and also it's not in the name though. We don't have it in the name, but we have some dust, some hair maybe. I get this a lot when I scan at home. One thing, if you're scanning at home, doing a really thorough wash I found has helped a lot. And doing a thorough wash, even if you do, like I have, I don't know if there's another technical name for it, but a washer for my reels. So basically I just run it in the sink. It has like a tube and it runs fresh water through the negatives. Even if I do that, I still do a very nice, like with distilled water, I'll do one more hand wash after, and that helps a lot with the dust and everything. It's very frustrating to, I prefer to scan my own negatives, but For some work, not all of my work, I don't want dust. I do want that perfect image. Usually when I'm shooting medium format, when I'm shooting 35 millimeter, I kind of like that rough, gritty look. I'm okay with it. I'm shooting film in part because it's a challenge to the perfect, pristine, high-resolution digital photography. Everything's perfect now, perfect models, perfect makeup, perfect retouching, perfect composition, perfect lighting, etc. And I love and because of that, I love the imperfections of film. And so I don't really go out of my way to get rid of a lot of dust. I'll get rid of dust, etc. that's on the face and that kind of thing. I think this is an image that would work really well in a rule of thirds. It's not quite, it's kind of in between again. And I think the leading lines of these shadows here and the light that the highlights here would draw you in to this area a bit more if you just went all in on a rule of thirds composition. Everything would just lead to her a bit better. So it looks like this was shot with studio light. Let's talk about the crop. So I challenge myself all the time. I think it's really important to have an open mind and to challenge your own ideas. And one thing I'm not a fan of is non-traditional crops. And not because of the usual meaning where you have like elitists that say, oh, if you crop, it just shows you didn't get it right in the first place, and you don't have the eye, and it's like a badge of honor to like not crop it. That's not why for me. I'm just not a fit. I understand that, and I'm not going to say that doesn't cross my mind at all, but I'm just not a fan of it in general. It's off-putting to me. It's not what I'm used to, but at the same time, then I challenge myself and say, well, these crops, like the 1-to-1 crop, the 4-to-6 crop, whatever, they are arbitrary in a sense. It's just a tradition. It is a format we've run with as humans, but there's no inherent reason to there's reasons to choose different crops, but why 4x6 or 4x7 or something, and why, there's no reason really. It is almost arbitrary. It's not arbitrary, but you guys hopefully understand what I'm saying. And so I end up where I don't know what I think. I have these two competing ideas, but I personally don't crop my images outside of their native aspect ratio. So I don't really crop 35 millimeter stuff into a 1-to-1 format, that kind of thing. Even though it is a traditional crop, 1-to-1 is what you get from like a Rolleiflex, a TLR, a lot of different medium formats. Drunk Saru, I actually like the composition of the way the photos are cropped in the 1-to-1 thumbnails in the upper right. I think you had to say more than the actual image. I'm looking at that. Yeah, I see that. They do work as thumbnails, actually. They do work. Let's go to the next one. I did look at these images before because there weren't a lot. I usually like to look at them for the first time with people, but this is an interesting image that it has like a timeless feel or a vintage feel to it to me. I believe it is a film photo. Yeah, you see the imperfections. It looks like you're shooting through. Oh wait, what am I looking at actually? Because it has almost like a. I actually don't know what I'm looking. Maybe you guys can help me. But do you guys see how like there's some mirror effect? Okay. I'm trying to figure out what's causing this look. Do you guys see how the paper towels are kind of split right here? And okay, I think you're actually shooting into the mirror. Okay. Yeah, I'm not good at figuring this stuff out apparently. But it looks like you might be shooting into the mirror. And then there's a mirror behind you as well, I think. But anyway, let's just talk about not the aesthetics. Let's talk about just the image. And here's one where this headspace does work. This is a great environmental portrait because there's so much happening that the initial image is interesting, I like it. I like the lighting. But then you have these like layers of things happening that kind of envelop the person and add to a story. A good environmental portrait is you're going to learn so much more, or you have the potential to learn more about the person by the items they're surrounded by the environment. So I think this is a really successful environmental portrait. It's something I can look at for a while. I still don't entirely understand like the effect that the mirror is causing. I don't know. I'd love to hear. I thought it was I thought it was through a mirror or a window at first. When I first looked at the image, I thought he walked right up from the outside of an office, but I don't think that's what's going on actually. You can see him in the reflection here, but I don't quite know why you'd get this effect where you have like it's like a prism almost, where you have these like layers, you have these lines. I don't know if you guys can see it on your screen. Like you have lines. Yeah, this is my favorite image so far, Mon, of the work we're looking at. And it's a kind of image that you can really spend a lot of time on. It's not the end all be all, and it's hard, so much of photography and art is subjective. But one measure I find works for me is good work I can usually spend more time on. There's more layers to it. That's not to say that a close-up candid where everything's blurred out in the background and you have someone crying maybe isn't powerful, but I can look at that, it resonates hard, and then I can move on really quickly. Where an image like this, I can spend more time on it. One way you can enhance the feeling of isolation, or maybe there's a moment, maybe you want to... So I use Mr. Robot as an example all the time for a TV show, especially early season, because it wanted to amplify or convey his anxiety, his isolation. They use a lot of non-traditional cropping, very interesting ways of composing their work, the scene. And so one thing you can do, putting a character toward the edge, having them looking off frame instead of inward on the frame, all can add to that feeling of isolation, that mystery. And so having this like very large brick wall pattern and then having a lack of eye contact and driving the subject matter to the corner of the frame enhances this feeling of isolation and loneliness and that kind of thing. Now there's it really, context matters. It doesn't mean because you put someone there, they're going to look isolated or lonely necessarily, but it can enhance that potentially. Battery's running low already on my laptop. All right. This is probably an underexposed expired film is my guess on this one. Probably like something like Kodak Gold. You know, that's my guess. This is what my work looks like when I develop with like expired chemicals to boot. But this one actually, I don't know if it's your intention, but this one I get a similar energy from this one. I like this one. There's some mystery involved. I'm not entirely sure how to interpret it, and that's a good thing for me. Like, I like it. I don't know if she's contemplative, sad, happy. It's really, it can go a lot of different ways, I think. I do like the multiple layers of the image. You have a lot of different layers that looks like you shot it with the telephoto. So telephotos have that compression effect where things look, you can't gauge distance as well. I liken it to like, if imagine you're taking a piece of construction paper and then you're creating layers on top of it to create like a picture of a house or a picture of a family in front of their house, and you're just doing everything. Every layer is just a piece of construction paper. So there's no sense of depth, and that's what you can get from a telephoto. My laptop died on me, so I'm gonna have to pull my phone out to follow your guys' questions. Give me one moment, or I can quickly plug that in. Give me 1 second, guys. I try to stealth get the plug because I'm wearing pajamas. All right. So here we're going. This looks like just a very look. It looks like you're going for a professional headshot. So this is This is an interesting crop as well. It almost looks like the crop you'd get from like a Pentax 6.7 kind of thing, as far as I can tell. So it's like 8x10. I would go very traditional. Like this is where you don't want to go out of the norm. If you're doing any professional work, you're doing headshots, that kind of thing, stick with traditional. Don't have excessive headroom. Don't do these non-traditional crops. Stick to you have pretty standard crops, like your acting headshot, which is like, mid torso. You might even crop at the head a little bit. Eye line is 1/3 of the way, that kind of thing. You have your 3/4 crop. You have your full body crop. We don't want to crop at the ankles, that kind of thing. But if you're doing your own work, do what you want. But I think it's important I think it's really important you can defend it. So if you're receiving a critique and someone says, why did you choose to do it the way you did it, whatever that is, you should be able to defend it. That's really important. Because as artists, you want to shoot with intention. That doesn't mean you can't shoot intuitively. You can shoot from your gut, and you don't have to kind of make everything conscious. A lot of my creative process personally isn't a conscious process. It starts very unconscious, where I don't know why I'm doing things the way I'm doing it. But that said, when it comes to my composition, whether I'm conscious of it or not, I shoot with intention. And I think when you're learning, you need to be conscious of it. When you've learned it and it's become second nature, it doesn't mean you're not considering the way you're shooting it anymore. You're just not consciously thinking about it. I hope that made sense. Drunk Saru says, looks like the focus was on the tip of the nose. Yeah, I think we're looking at this image, or you're referring to this image. Yeah, I believe it is as well. I get the most detail, actually, I would say on the lips and the nose. And so we did miss focus a bit here. I think this crop works. I like it. There's a acting headshot trend to really not that, I don't know if that was the intention for this image, to be an acting headshot, but it just made me think of it. There's an acting headshot trend to put people at the far, really cramped on the edge of the frame and have kind of a crop. It's a little weird. I don't have an example to pull up for you guys right now, though. Here, I think we missed our, I think, I'm going to just say that. We missed our focus here a bit. Again, it's not quite on the eye. As long as your eyes are in focus, the image is in focus. This is a nice one. So what you guys can see here is Andrew is having her bring her chin down a little bit so that we're able to connect with the eye more. So we don't want the chin up. It's not like the mid-90s where everyone took a photo like that. We want to bring the chin down so that the eyes can connect with us. We bring the eyes forward when we bring the chin down. Other ways you can kind of make sure the viewer is going to connect with the eyes first is by shooting above. So if someone's sitting on a stool or a chair, you can get a little bit above them, and then you can actually have them look up at you without bringing the chin down. But if you're centered with them, or you're shooting head on, I should say, having them bring the chin down brings the eye line closer to you or the viewer. And you included dog photos because he knows I love dogs. Here's an image where we have leading lines that are actually drawing us away from the dog. And so if we look here, although the rays of the sun is bringing our eye toward the dog here, unfortunately the trail and the layered, there's a layer here, a layer of the trail, the shadow, and then this light, all those layers are all driving our eye beyond. Now, what could have worked is, if it's your intention, you could have done a rule of thirds either way. You could have cropped with the dog on the left side and then we have the mystery of the trail that leads off, or we could have the dog on the right side where all the lines lead toward our destination. But what we have here is we have kind of like in between. It's just kind of placed in the middle. So I would have gone with one of those options, to be honest, personally. I like this one. Again, though, it's a theme of your cropping. Andrew, I would consider trying more traditional crops and not always centering your subject right in the middle. But the headroom, like in this image, is nice. I love all the tones and everything. It is beautiful. A little bit curious how you shot it, if this is sort of a studio light brought outdoors, but we do have a light source reflection we can see in the eye here. I think this background could have made a really beautiful background centered behind the dog, because you could create almost like a vignette naturally by placing the dog in between and maybe getting lower to kind of position it where that background, that area would be your actual background. Because it is really beautiful, but it's also pulling my eye toward there, and I'd rather that envelop or be behind the subject matter and create like a spotlight with a vignette. I like this one because I like this dog because you could just see a lot of soul and personality in it. He's always got the one ear down, it looks like, too. I enjoyed I just enjoy the aesthetic of this shot. This one's a film shot. I do like it. I'm guessing some old, probably, again, like gold 200 or whatever, possibly expired, but it looks good. I'm not a complete expert in, I mean, yes, I do teach darkroom classes and all, but I'm not like, I like photography because I like shooting, and some people like photography to talk about tech and engineering and all that, and that's not really me. But there are, I believe, reasons where, you know, it doesn't, your image might not look sharp, not always because you didn't nail focus. It can get an unsharp look in the development process, I think, too. But my head's not fully wrapped around that. A lot of stuff I learned, I then make a subconscious decision. Is this important? Should I hold on to it? Is it going to affect my shooting experience? And if it's no, I usually forget it until I need to relearn it to explain it to a student. I really liked this image because of all the texture. And I wonder if you manipulated your clarity or texture slider in Lightroom or something. But the texture in the dog's hair, along with this couch, which is very vintage aesthetic. It's not a modern looking couch, but I really do like the way it all works together. All right, so that was it for this work. Time is at 11, so I do have some time. I will quickly share a job with you guys. So let me pull that up. I have to pull up OBS. Let's go to Lightroom. And let's talk about another job I shot. And let's quickly take a look, because I had some, from Andrew, I had some questions about events. And here they are. Do you have a game plan when you arrive? Do you scout or walk the venue like a sport photographer? Do you have a list of must-have shots like a wedding photographer? If so, what are examples? I believe that's everything. Okay, I can, without pulling the work up, I've talked about this, I think, but let's talk about it again. I don't have a game plan. I don't have a shot list. I know the game. In other words, like, I've done this long enough, I kind of know what I'm there to capture. I don't have to consciously think about it or write it down. I think, though, if you're starting out, having a shot list can be helpful. I'm not a fan of it for, like, if I were to become a wedding photographer again, I probably would not have a shot list back when I started, and I had the pressure to do what other people were doing because I didn't have the experience or confidence to go my own way entirely. I was still like doing my shot list, and there were these shots, and you had these hyper trends that like you would see in wedding blogs, and then other people would see that, so they're like, oh, that's what I'm supposed to do, and they would get the same shots. Examples: the shot where they crop at the head and you have the flowers being held or something in the hands being held and stuff like that. And people would write out a shot list for the creative portrait session of the wedding, at least. Not necessarily for the ceremony, that kind of thing, but your hour where you're shooting formal / creatives, people would have a shot list. I'm not a fan because that's not what I do. Even back then, I would do those shots, but then I was really there to capture the candids. I did what I had to do because I felt the pressure, but I always kind of did my own thing. So if you're experienced, or at this point shooting events, no, I don't have a shot list. I show up early because that's a good time to shoot details. It's a good time possibly to get some setting up shots if that might be good. I don't like the anxiety of not knowing if I'm going to show up to a job on time, and so I always show up early for that reason. I don't like feeling rushed, but usually I show up at a job, I'm ready to shoot. I quickly reformat my memory cards. That's what I do every job. After I go home and upload photos, I don't reformat that memory card until the next job. It's always good to have an extra backup, you know. Even if I've done the edit, backed it up, posted, put the images in the cloud, it's always good to have those images on a memory card as well. Why not? But when I start a new job, I quickly reformat and I'm shooting. So no shot list. I'm there to capture and document. And I'm familiar with the job and that kind of thing. So we're going to look at, I'm going to try to, I'll address the golden ratio lately. I talked about rule of thirds a lot today because these images weren't really following them in a conventional sense. But I'm not like, I don't think rule of thirds is the end all be all for composition, just to be clear. Like, all right, so here's some detail shots. I didn't like how these came out, but I had like 10 seconds to try to get these formal portraits of it was a bridal party, if I'm remembering correctly. There's a lot of photos. It's a 5-hour job, I think. And so I'm going to go through them pretty quickly. You guys are going to see everything, not just highlights, not just like my best work. Some of the images I might not love, but you don't want to edit an image out because you don't love it if you think the client will find some value in it. If you get a shot of grandma smiling, and it's slightly out of focus, but the moment is there, you don't want to edit that out. Event photography is you are doing a service for someone else. It's not your baby, and sometimes clients will want you to photograph them, and you know the lighting isn't ideal, but you do it. It's your job, however. First of all, if you're a good photographer, the answer should be, oh, can we shoot it here? And you should be able to say confidently, I can make anything work. But sometimes I know there's a reason they want a bad location, lighting-wise maybe, but the background's important to them, I will do it. And then I will say, oh, let me also grab you guys over here and we'll get a few shots here, that kind of thing. Chris, what lens did you use for the job? Not just one lens, you know that. Metadata. Let's go change. Oh, here we go. Lenses. So we're looking at the JPEG folder. 114 shots were made with the 17-40. 650 were made with a 24-70. 181 were made with a 70-200. 51 with an 85. 80 with a 135. So I used a lot of lenses for the job. In fact, I pretty much used every lens I own. I've got like, for the EOS mount, I have a nifty 50 I don't use for professional work. I use it here and there, like to demonstrate stuff to my students, but I don't consider it reliable for pro work. Not that you can't use it, you can. In fact, I used it when I first started out. But I pretty much used everything I have. Let's get rid of that. Like here, I'm guessing that's an 85. Oh, that's actually the 135. You thought I only used one lens? You guys can see here I had them move where I could get a little bit better light. The light was spotty. We had a lot of spotty light. We didn't have even shade really. So what I did is I backlit and looked to minimize any type of, I don't know what you would call that, but that scattered light that goes through the trees and then creates hot spots on the face. You want to avoid that. So I chose to backlight. So when I arrive to a job, you know, they might want formals. I shoot those. I shoot details. I try to get some wide shots if possible of the entire environment. But for the most part, what I'm doing there for almost 5 hours is documenting the moments, looking for the candids. I also do crowd work, and by crowd work I mean identifying groups of 2 or more, approaching them and be like, hey, can I get a shot of you guys? Big smile. You can work silently as a photographer if you don't like interacting with people, like, or using your voice. I do use my voice, but I also do a lot of nonverbal cues. If I need someone to smile, I smile. They will smile back. Often wording thank you. Like, you know, I don't need to, like, if it's a loud environment, I don't need to, like, say, hey, thank you. You know, I just go, thank you, appreciate it. You know, I kind of whisper it or mouth it. So, you know, sometimes, like, the better you are, the more, you know, you're going to get a higher quality overall, for sure. But there are some things that I couldn't do. Maybe I could have done more here, for example. There's nothing great about this composition. The lighting's whatever. But I didn't want to miss Mom's reaction. And the place I was standing, and also I quickly grabbed that too, and then a fraction of a second I grabbed that one. The place I was standing, that's the best shot I could get, but it's Mom's reaction. I deliver it. I'll often see a lot of people interacting. I go down the line and I try to get multiple reactions. So here it looks like I quickly spun. I think this woman here is sitting across this woman, and so I quickly panned left, grabbed her reaction. So I'm like bam, 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 right? And being really good and familiar with your camera and operating it like knowing it like the back of your hand is really important in order to do that. Let's talk settings. I was shooting in, I don't ever remember if it tells you if you're shooting in manual or not, but I'm pretty sure I was shooting in manual. Settings, if they're important to you, I'm shooting wide open. So this is what the 135 millimeter looks like wide open at f2. 500th of a second, ISO 100. So it was a pretty bright day. I'm gonna grab more coffee. Actually, I think of water. Water is better. I do have an arsenal of lenses. I do use them all. I didn't start with all of them. I built them up. You know, it took me years as a struggling photographer who decided to do this full time right away. It took years to build a kit, and so much of what I made from photography just went into my kit for a few years, you know. And now I probably have maybe $20,000 worth of gear, but it took years to get that. And I always want to remind people that you don't need to have like a $20,000 kit to do this job. You could shoot. I could have shot this job with one lens. I would prefer it be like a 24-70, even though it's like the most boring lens. I don't like using it, but I mean, you guys saw my least favorite lens probably I own, and when you look at the metadata, I used it the most. 651 shots out of the over 1,000 images. So basically 60% of the work I shot in this job was on the 24-70. So here we have a few reactions. I decided to keep them. I'll do some really close-ups. I mix up very close-up candid, emotional candids with over-the-shoulder stuff to provide context. Aman asked if I was in M. Do you use more M, manual over aperture priority? I do. It's somewhere around 90%. What kind of audio gear do you have that's worth 20 grand? Number 138. Where was that? Way back. There's a delay. I'm going back now. Oh, like on the in order, not the file name. This one. Yeah. My focus is not perfect here, but this is the kind of image your client is going to love. You gotta remember that. It's not about you. You know, if you just want to shoot and make your own art, don't do this professionally. You know, if you gotta understand that you're providing a service to your client. You can't be the arrogant artist and like, I don't shoot formals, you know, like, oh, I only do candid. I'm a photojournalist photographer. I only do candids, you know. You can't do that kind of thing. Aman, I don't like the 24-70. Now I have the version 1. It's not as sharp as I'd like it to. You know what? I don't even pay attention. I think mine's the first version. It's not that sharp. I agree, actually. This lens is not that sharp, and I've actually thought it had to do with my copy, but sharpness is not everything. It's okay. Maybe, you know, it's like before I'd even consider if I were, you know, for myself and others, I wouldn't even consider upgrading lenses. You buy the lenses you don't have, and maybe one day you have everything and you're making a lot of money. Maybe you had a good year and you can start like upgrading, but I haven't even considered upgrading my 24-70. In fact, this will be the year, or I hoped it would be, but then, you know, with COVID-19 and everything, I don't know if it will be, but would be the year I upgrade my camera. And after that, I would probably start looking at lenses to upgrade. But now there's some doubt about when I will upgrade, because let's see how things shape up, you know. Let's see how work begins to improve, which it will, I'm sure. But I need to start booking before I start investing in my business, you know. Like, why should I buy a new camera right now if I'm not shooting much? So you guys see what I'm doing. Every shot I'm looking for a moment. So that's a moment. That's a moment. So an alternative to this shot, but it's still a moment, right? I'm looking for the big smiles. I like this kind of shot. I've got another question. No, I post, so Chris asks if I carry my lenses. I don't like working that way. If you follow my channel, I talk a lot about like shooting with two bodies when I shoot with two bodies, and it's not very often. It's only if I know I'm like, maybe I have to photograph a speaker on stage and then like a group, and then I have to photograph the people reacting to him or her, and those shots need to be shot wide, and or if I'm shooting with primes, maybe that could be a good reason. But I don't shoot like two primes too often. Also, I really favor my 5D Mark III to the 7D Mark II. Mark II is actually a newer camera. It has better autofocus. But I find I don't like the... I had an X-T3 for a while, and that's a crop frame camera, and I was impressed. I didn't find, oh, I wish this was full frame. But comparing my 7D Mark II crop frame camera to my 5D Mark III full frame camera, I notice a difference, and I don't like it, okay? And so I prefer to shoot with my 5D. So 7D is more of a backup, and so I'm usually not shooting with two bodies unless I have to. But your question... was, so yes, I'm running back to my bag and switching. And if it's a job that's going to have scheduled events, different speakers on stage, different things happening, if you do the job enough, you get a sense for when things are going to happen, that you are ready to go. Also, I've really put a lot of thought into the way I move, the way I can maneuver through crowds. I have a pretty slender build. I'm able to navigate very quickly. And so I also do this thing where I'm not running, but I'm not walking, that really fast shuffle. And so I'm able to get to my bag very quickly to make my lens changes. And so I prefer to work that way. Sometimes it means saying, oh, I don't have the right lens if someone asks me for a group shot, but I can quickly go change the lens and they'll wait. Or I say, I'll come back to you guys. Like if they're sitting at a cocktail table and socializing, I'm like, oh, I'll be back. I'll make sure I get it. I'll make a mental note, group shot of that group. Aman says, I still use it. Okay, hang on. Okay, so we're still talking about the 24-7, that you still use it for events, but that you make portraits, so you go with the 85. Yeah. So back to what I was saying about upgrading. I was thinking the Canon 5R or R5 will be my next camera, not because it's mirrorless. I'm not like anti DSLR actually, and I think there may be some value to a DSLR. I wonder how a mirrorless camera will affect the way I work, because I shoot with two eyes. I do certain things that I don't think a mirrorless camera will do as well or work as well for. And for example, that two-eye shooting. I also think that things we as people throw in the garbage bin, we often then see the value in later on. So for example, vinyl records, I remember when people were begging me to take them at garage sales, begging me, and now prices have gone crazy. And I think I really like this shot. I think we might look back, I wish the grandma's eyes were open more, but I think we might look back at DSLRs and really enjoy that process of actually seeing what's in front of you, not through a digital screen. I do. That doesn't mean it will be a better tool for professional work, but I think we might perceive it that way, give it enough time. But yes, the Canon 5, what is it, 5R, R5, whatever, I assumed would be my next camera because I go every other generation, and I'm starting to see the age in my 5D Mark III show. It's a great tool. I could probably shoot events with it for another 5 years if I had to. Nobody's going to notice. And if you're good at photography, you get more leeway maybe, But I thought it would probably be my next camera. I already have a 51.2 for it, and I thought, well, if I really want to shoot like wide open and have tack sharp images, I'll use that. And so this workhorse here is my long way of making a point, will probably remain my workhorse. I don't think I will upgrade it. I don't think I'll get an R version, which will cost me like $3,000, Probably won't. Aman says he invested a few months before COVID. Aman, so you guys are familiar with me because I'm in front of the camera, and I'm not as familiar with you guys. Some of you guys don't even use your real names and that kind of thing. But maybe, and sometimes you guys tell me stuff I forget, I'll be honest, because I can't attach a face to your name, and so it's harder to remember. But Aman, do you shoot professionally? I don't know if you've ever mentioned it or not, and I apologize if you have. But yeah, that sucks, investing and then this happening. Yeah, that's not fun. And really, we shouldn't call it invest. I mean, you're investing in yourself, your business, sure, but gear is not an investment in a technical sense. Has a client ever asked you to do the selection for them? Clarify for me, but I'm guessing you mean like, have they asked me to get it down to like my favorite 100 or something? No. Maybe sometimes back in the day when I would do photo books for people when I wasn't really shooting like events as much. I still shot some weddings. So here's an example of the light is total crap, but they're not gonna, if they knew I didn't give them this image, they wouldn't like that, right? It's about your client, not about like all your standards, you know? Anyway, I lost my train of thought, but yeah, back in the day when maybe I was shooting weddings and stuff, and maybe someone would ask for an album, they would have must-haves, and then they would leave it up to me outside of that. But as far as this type of work we're looking at, event photography work like this, no, nobody's ever asked me to narrow it down more. Chris says, do you care about how many megapixels? I care so little that I don't even know what the 5D Mark III has. I'm not kidding. I think you say 24 millimeters because you know my 5D3 has that. I think that's what it is. And I think the Mark II is only like 22, right? I don't care. I'm not against it though. I'm not against more megapixels. That's for sure. And like I had a student who had the 5S, is it? The high megapixel DSLR Canon came out with like years ago now, but it looked beautiful. It looked really nice. I'm not gonna lie. So I'm not opposed to it. I have a concern. I don't think I need 50 megapixels. I think there are diminishing returns for event photography. I don't do a lot of cropping, but that doesn't mean, just because there's people that like when they don't have something, they have to rationalize that it's necessarily bad. Like, oh, I don't have a lot of megapixels, so they rationalize how you don't need it, how it's bad even. You see people do that kind of thing. Like, well, I don't crop. I always get my cropping right. It's like, well, that's not the point. You might need to crop, that kind of thing. Or I don't need IBIS. I have a steady hand, or I only do stills. It's like, why would you not want IBIS though? When Canon wasn't offering it for years, they still aren't until their new camera comes out, in-body IBIS. That's not a reason to not want it. You should always want like tech if it's available to you. A little bit strange crop, but I love that I got both the parents in the shot. So you guys can see I'll quickly move my focus point. A lot of questions, a lot of engagement today, actually. I appreciate that, guys. If a lot of people follow my channel and never say hello, and I love when you guys say hi. I like to know who's watching, that kind of thing. You should offer video invites to your live streams. What do you mean by video invites? I'm not actually sure what you mean. Back to the megapixels. Another issue I have with megapixels, or an issue I have with megapixels, a concern. Actually, would given the choice, yeah, I would prefer more than what my camera has, but I don't dwell on it. So I'm talking about how I probably will get the Canon. Someone please correct me so I don't have to like look it up. R5 or 5R? R5, right? I think it's R5. I'm talking about how I'll probably get that camera. I'm not 100% sure, but I have a concern with it. My computer crashed at the end of last year. I decided to just repair it and keep it going for about another year if I can before making an upgrade. But the problem is if I get the R5, it will be much more intensive on my computer than processing files from the 5D Mark III. I remember how slow Lightroom got from going from the Canon, the 5D original to the 5D Mark III, and I anticipate something similar if I'm going to like a 45 megapixel camera from a 24. That's a concern of mine. So it sucks. Like, upgrade your camera, gotta upgrade your computer. Chris says, I see the A7R4 mirrorless is 61 megapixels and kind of overkill. Probably not if you're a landscape photographer though, but for what I do, I don't think I'll need that. Now, if you're telling me more megapixels means a better tonal range and that kind of thing, then I'm more into that than actual pure resolution. You know, most of my files are downsized to 2048 megapixels length for social media, and they're looked at on small cell phones. You know, clients use it for marketing, that kind of thing. This is not a technically good shot, but it's the only shot I got from the groom entering. So I'm not perfect. I won't pretend to be. I don't make that mistake too often, not getting a good shot. Maybe I wasn't warned, and even though I had a sense for it, I just couldn't get the shot I wanted. All right, more questions. Doug says nobody needs 60 megapixels of a guy on stage with a 6-foot check. Yeah, right? I agree. I'm wondering if you guys can hear that background noise going on in the other room. So you guys see, I'm just covering the hell out of this job. It's lots and lots of photos. So one thing I was hoping with Canon's next kind of cycle of products was that, so for context, Canon was the first camera manufacturer to release a full-frame camera. I believe it was under $2,000 or at $2,000 when they released the 6D. And Sony, they're smart. They're aggressive with their marketing. They know what they're doing, and I think a lot of what they're going after is market share, at least right now. And I wonder if their camera department's even profitable. If you guys look at the stats, their digital imaging, whatever they call that department, it's like 1% to 3% of their entire company. It's not a big division. But I think, pricing the A7 III at $2,000 and that coinciding with a pretty good adapter that would let you adapt your Canon lenses to it was a ploy to like grab market share, for sure. But I was hoping that they would, even though Canon had the 6D, the A7 III wasn't like a 6D equivalent. It was pretty full featured, you know. You had to spend $1,500 more just for the better sensor in the R3, I guess, and a better screen. You didn't get that much. I mean, maybe you can argue a better camera sensor is kind of everything, but I was hoping that the 6D, or the R6 that's rumored, would be kind of a similar situation where you have a fully fledged R5 and then a slightly pared down but entirely capable professional camera for events in the R6. But the rumors are that the R6 is going to be a camera of a lesser build quality, which I'm not really okay with. My next camera can't just be a technical upgrade. I don't want to downgrade in any way as far as like the build quality and the feel of the camera. And that's one thing I think, by the way, the A7 III fails on. It might be a technically very solid camera, especially when it came out, but I didn't care for it when it came to being a tool used for professional work, personally. Anyway, I was hoping, hey, maybe I can get by with a $2,000 professional camera with the 6Rs, R6, and it doesn't look like I'm going to. It looks like they're going to push me into the 5. Sorry. Dying. Okay, that's a hard name to say for me. Radhamis Reyes, let me know if I'm saying it right. You were considering getting the 5D Mark III for event work. What are your thoughts on the autofocus speed and reliability in low light situations? I mean, I'm making my living with it, you know. It does the job pretty well. I didn't feel like it was limited. It's weird how over time my mind was open to what a camera could possibly do. Even though I haven't really used extensively a newer camera, over time I started to feel like, okay, my autofocus could be better, my low light performance could be better, etc. But that said, it's capable. It's very capable. I could shoot, though, professionally with a 5D Mark II if I had to, you know. And if you develop your skill enough, you can overcome the shortcomings of a camera. But yeah, I think it's good enough. I would like it to be better. Its autofocus speed and reliability. I think, yeah, again, my 7D Mark II is actually even better. Actually, is it? In low light, I'm not 100% sure. But if you're working in that budget, you can do it. You know, you can use it as a professional camera still. Absolutely. Especially if you don't need video. Honestly, I thought the 5D Mark III was just as capable for the most part as the Mark IV. Mark IV seemed to be more like a 5D Mark III with a touch screen and better video features. That's why I didn't get it. It wasn't a big enough upgrade. I just tend to do every other camera body. So we've been going. Today went fast. I don't know. I should have probably edited a few of these out. I've said this before, though. When I'm doing my edit, I'm kind of juggling expediency, getting the files to the client as soon as possible with a quality edit. Hey, Alex. I think I'll be going for a little bit longer, too. Today's a long one. I thought you usually do make these live. You've made a few of them live, I thought. Okay. Chris says, the R5 looks really good from what I've read. The video quality says to outbeat the Sonys with 8K video, I think. Do you ever shoot video for work? I hire a videographer. I don't believe in splitting my time and being a hybrid shooter. It's a different. So much of it translates. Let's be clear: composition, lighting, etc. It all translates over to video, but you're using two different parts of your brain. I feel like shooting video and shooting stills. Shooting stills, you're looking for those defining moments, those highlights. But shooting video is a little bit different. And I wouldn't want to split my brain. You know, I wouldn't want to do that. And so when a client needs video, I have a couple of video people I like to work with. But you guys know I have a YouTube, and so video is relevant to me now. It's funny, I could not care less before, but now I care. But that said, I'm not excited. I don't care. Oh, the 5D, the R5 is gonna have 8K. A big deal. Who cares? Nobody's going to watch it in 8K, and I know that's not a good enough reason, and I don't want to contradict myself, so let me explain my thoughts correctly here. I'll take the 8K. I don't need the 8K, but I can imagine, I know why 8K is valuable, because you can crop down to 6K, you can crop down to 4K, have more resolution, that kind of thing. That's awesome. That said, I wouldn't buy a camera based off of it personally. I don't even post. Well, I had an X-T3 for a little while, and the 4K looked awesome. I really liked it, but even that was kind of too much for my computer, to be honest. I need a new computer. 4K was too much. 8K? Forget it. It's interesting. They know 8K is like the buzzword. Like that's what, it's a headline grabber for sure. But how many of us photographers care? I don't know. I mean, I want to know. I have faith in Canon. Here's the thing. Canon needs to work. They do so much right that there's a lot of rage about what they do wrong, right? The cripple hammer and all that. But they get so much right, better than anyone or as good as. Their build quality, reliability, ergonomics. They make workhorse cameras. And all they need to do is fix their mistakes. They don't need to worry about like anything else, in my opinion. So I think this is going to be the camera that will. I also anticipate people raging. No matter how good the camera will be, they will find something. The narrative always will like shift, and people will find a new way to be angry. I think it might be the price. There's a chance it's going to be over $3,500. Like I said, I was hoping it was going to be $3,500. They were going to follow Sony's price points, and then the R6 would be $2,000, and maybe the R6 would be good enough for me, and I could save money. But at worst, I'd spend $3,500, and then you have all these people online saying, "Oh, this camera's got a lot of tech. It's definitely going to be over $4,000. Oh, I think it's going to be $6,000. I'd happily pay it." And I'm like, please don't say that, just in case Canon's listening. Like, don't tell them you're going to pay $6,000. What if they then charge that much? I think we're going to see it at $4,000 personally. Only because Canon they always play this game. They kind of tax early adopters. They do it with every camera. They price at above what they really want to sell it at, so then they can have specials, holiday sales, and then they bring it down to what it really should be priced at, what most people will be willing to pay. So I do think it might come out at $4,000 and then come down to $3,500 once it's on sale, but I'm not 100% sure. I don't see them making this their like end all be all. Like, I don't see the 5D was like the affordable working photographer camera, right? I don't see them changing that much, and so I can't imagine them charging 1D prices for a 5D level camera. So I don't think people are right that think that. I could be completely wrong. I think it will be $4,000 though. All right, let's keep going through these images. Not ideal light for a wide angle lens because you're getting a lot of flaring, but you do what you can, make it work. I'm going to pick up the pace. If you guys have questions for me, let me know. So that way I can get to them before we end the live stream. If you're tuning in late or you've been watching all this time, please do consider giving it a thumbs up if you're liking the content so we can help the YouTube algorithm. I'm still not sure about what effects live streaming is having on my channel because it actually seems to hurt it, oddly enough. But that I still do it because I know there are people that are serious about event photography or enjoy my channel, and they're enjoying it. And so if the people that just casually watch or aren't really interested in this type of content and if they unsubscribe, that's okay. It's kind of where I'm at, but I'm always assessing, I'm always trying to figure it out. I haven't yet. Mark. I think maybe your name sounds a little familiar. What are you considering in terms of your lighting? We're using fill flash for the shoot, and generally, what is your approach to lighting equipment, sunlight, etc.? I could have used a flash to try to use some fill and if shooting into my light. I find that's less important if you're shooting with the telephoto. You're able to kind of create nice rim light without worrying about that. That's a big question, so I need to figure out how best to tackle it. First of all, my philosophy these days is definitely less is more. I try to get it done with less and use what I have available, and it's a fun challenge as well. And that even applies to doing like a portrait session if I shoot one. I try to do it without actually needing reflectors or an assistant. That doesn't mean I can't get more creative and use an assistant and reflectors, but I try to do it without in the first place. Yeah, Alex brings up a good point, that live streaming needs people to come. Do I publish a timetable and international public? It can be a problem. Okay, yeah, so I'm an imperfect person. I struggle with a lot of things, and that's the thing about my channel. I know my event photography, but I'm not going to pretend I know I'm like a master at everything, or I'm a perfect person that a lot of these like people on YouTube will have you think. I'm bad with my time, to be honest. I'm not great with managing it entirely, and so I've had to create a lot of systems in order to stay on top of my schedule. And one thing I have been struggling with is actually not waiting till the last minute for these to plan it out, and I'm gonna get better at it. That's all I have to say. But yeah, I'm still kind of toying with the idea of how often I should do it and when I should do it. It's a definite. So yeah, less is more. I try to use what I have. I try not to use flash. I'm not a fan of fill flash. You don't need fill flash to shoot in a bit, even if you're in the middle of the day. You can usually find ways to work with that direct light by positioning it behind your subject matter, like this example where we get a nice rim light. So I didn't need to have used a flash to make this work. Flash has another advantage though. If you are backlighting and you don't have anything reflecting light, you can use a flash to create a catch light in the eye so you don't have like dead eyes. Like for here, for example, there was stuff behind me that could have reflected light back into my frame, but it's not really hitting her eye, and so you get more of a dead eye look. Also, a lot of these look washed out, and for a reason. I left a circular polarizing filter, and it was affecting my images actually. It's weird. Not in the way it should have. I actually really liked, by the way, when I was doing a live stream every day. I really enjoyed it, but I felt like for you guys it might have been overkill. But you guys, I listen to your feedback, so you can let me know. But I thought maybe it was overkill for you guys. But I enjoyed waking up every day, prepping the stream, feeling like I helped people. If I did, I hoped I was helping people. But just doing something every morning and getting that done, I felt better for the rest of the day. It was a good start. And I found I was more productive by being productive right away in the morning. It set the tone for the pace for the rest of the day. Questions. How much editing did you do to lift the faces, or is Canon particularly good in the darker areas? Sometimes I'll pull up my midtones often for shots like what we were looking at. If I'm shooting into the light and maybe I underexpose, rather than pulling the entire exposure up, I'll pull shadows up. Once in a while, I'll brush in a little bit of a higher exposure in the faces to make them pop. I don't do it too often. I'm not the most thorough editor in the world. I enjoy shooting. I try to be as good as possible at my craft so I can avoid editing. One thing is like, yeah, I'm showing you guys like the real thing, the actual product I deliver, and it will be imperfect at times, but I don't have time to make over 1,000 photographs perfect. I'm a working professional shooting thousands every week. I can't do that. Now, if it's your portfolio shot, which I should edit more, even those I don't do, but I understand going a little, going the distance with those more so than with the bulk of your work. But as I've said before, I'm always trying to find a balance between delivering the files as quickly as possible and doing a quality edit. For me, most of my editing process is editing down. And even then, I could probably use some work, right? So if I did one more pass, I probably could have gone 1, 2, 3, 4. I have 4 images here. Probably could have gotten it down to maybe even just 1. Maybe 2, because I think there's a distinctly... the difference in the gentleman's smile is distinct enough between like the first and last shot, so I could have probably gotten those 4 images down to 2 if I went through one more edit. Usually when I'm gonna do a video, and I think as soon as this live stream ends today, I'm actually gonna schedule out 3 live streams, because not just because of what was brought up today, but because I actually was thinking about it, that I kind of need to do that. And if I do it right away, then I'm held to it. It forces me to prep earlier and that kind of thing. So I have 3 in the pipeline. I want to do a full job edit with you guys. It's going to be extra work for me because it's going to be a job I'm going to edit an old job from scratch, because I did not have to do the edit for that job because it's a shoot and scoot situation with that client. I basically shoot in RAW and JPEG, deliver the RAW the JPEGs night of, and then I keep the RAWs for myself in case. I've had to use it once, actually. But I'm going to take all those RAW files and do an edit from beginning to end. I also, Doug, you're still here. We're going to do a live stream, and right now I'm thinking that will be an interactive critique where Doug will join us, and we will do it live, and you guys can help with the critique, give your opinions, watch along as we do a critique. It will be a bit more in-depth than the one we started with today as well. Let's see, there's a bunch of questions. Wow, a lot of questions coming. Okay, cool, I like that. Casa, I actually have a queue. I was just thinking about some colorful neon photos outside, but with normally lit person in front. I'm torn between getting a cheapo flash or an LED light. Any opinions? Well, if you have just like $100, 180 or whatever, you don't have to spend like the 600 to get the Canon flash anymore. My understanding is that those Godox flash units are like 95% there, maybe even more. I mean, they're pretty much identical knockoffs, I think. When I started out, you could only go with Canon, and that sucked because there was some price gouging. Like the STE2 infrared controller, which I bought in order to trigger my flash off camera, because the flash on the camera couldn't even do it back then. Plus the 5D doesn't have a built-in flash. But it was just an infrared trigger, and it cost $250. Now you can get stuff for so much cheaper. So maybe consider the flash. Mark, I was looking for any hints of fill as you were going through the photos, and they're actually pretty successful for not having used a fill. Yeah, you don't need to use a fill flash. It's an option. I try to do it without. It's harder with a wide angle. Shooting wide into your light source creates a lot of problems. When you're shooting a telephoto, here's my non-technical explanation. You're creating a window, and so that the light isn't going to hit the glass quite as easily and create that foggy look. And you can get a really nice rim light, actually. So often that's one way I mitigate shooting into my light source. Also, exposure compensation if you're in aperture priority. I know that if I'm shooting into my light source and I'm photographing someone Caucasian, I'm actually almost compensating by 1, maybe almost 2, like a little under +2, to compensate for A, they have a light complexion, And if I'm filling my frame with their light complexion skin, then I need to tell the camera that I should be over middle gray or mid-tone. I should be up +1, but also the camera is getting fooled by that backlight. And in combination, I find that overexposing, overcompensating by 1 3/4 actually works well. If you're photographing someone with darker skin, then maybe not quite 1 3/4, etc. Okay. Alex, responding to Casa, one flash I picked up, €49, secondhand, SB26, which has a bounce card built in. Okay. Yep, right-in camera is easier and more satisfying, I feel. Yeah. What? That works on a Fuji? No, that probably wouldn't work on a Fuji. Some flash units will work as a like cold shoe or kind of flash unit where it's not communicating with the lens, but you can trigger it. That's a possibility. Like you can even get some vintage film cameras. I wouldn't be surprised if you could trigger it with a modern DSLR, but I'm not 100% sure myself. You could also get like an old manual flash that has like the sync cord where you can actually just plug it into that and then trigger your flash that way. Okay. €50, right? So that's a decent amount to work with. How do you go about sharing your photos with your clients? Do you primarily share images online for clients to view, or do you do an in-person follow-up? So, Mark, because I'm not sure how long you've been following my channel. I do mostly like corporate event stuff. I don't do like family portraiture where I'm upselling or printing and framing, and I did a little bit of that in the day. I've structured my business to work for me in a lot of ways, and if you're trying to make every nickel you can, that's not the advice you should follow. But for me, I like people a lot. I really like people, but I like to do the job and just not have to then upsell and have prolonged interaction. Like, I just want to create these amazing moments for people and then provide it to, that's not even a good shot, provide it to them as like a full service. Like, you have everything, not like full service like, now I'm gonna make prints for you and you paid for a package. No, I charge a rate that I feel happy about. I charge a rate I can get, but I just want to give them all the files in high resolution. And even as a courtesy, I offer it. I do a second gallery with social media files. I use SmugMug to host my galleries, and you can order prints from it, but I actually downgraded my payment plan because before it was like 300 something a year, but I was selling prints and doing that kind of thing, and it more or less paid for itself. Now I don't do that because I'm not really shooting the kind of jobs people are ordering prints from. Nobody's really ordering prints from a corporate event. So yeah, for me, the type of work I shoot and for what works for me, I'm not really doing that kind of thing. That said, it's important I don't do an in-person follow-up because most of my clients I don't even meet in person. It's extremely rare for the kind of work I do that I actually meet a client in person prior to an event. Some companies want a face-to-face meeting, but so rare. I mean, it's 1 out of 100, if that. So I'm not doing too much of that. I hope I answered your question. Doug says, light overcast days are best for outdoor events. Easiest. I'll say easiest for sure. My opinion on, I did a video, maybe I took it down because it got like 2 views, but I did a video on overcast days not necessarily being the best days to shoot, but being the easiest days. I think it's good advice to people that you're a new photographer and you want to know, when's it easy? What's the best time of day to go shoot? And yeah, like a golden hour, it's beautiful. Overcast day is a great day because you can pretty much make anything work. But then people don't realize that the direction you're shooting does still actually play a part. The direction of your light, even if it's completely even above, it still has a direction. You're still going to get like a specular highlight from the sun peeking through the clouds, that kind of thing. Usually you want to shoot with the light in those situations, or else you get kind of a washed out. Even though it's overcast, you still end up kind of like a washed out look. I hope I'm explaining myself well, but I find I can do more with light when I'm not shooting overcast. If I'm doing an outdoor event, it would probably be in my interest for it to be overcast. But if I'm shooting a portrait session at a nice location that has a lot of options, I actually prefer it to not be overcast, because I can do a lot with that direct light. I can reflect it. I can find natural reflections like white walls from a building, and that's giving me a lot of really directional, large, diffused light. Okay, Casa, I think Go Docs are available for Fuji. I think they are too. I was considering a handheld LED for light modeling. I'm used to continuous. If you're used to it and you're not looking to grow or experiment, it seems like you can do that. You can use an LED. Doug says Zenfolio is another good one for herring. What am I missing here? Sharing. Another good one for sharing. Sorry, it's like I'm balancing too many things in my head. That's what he uses. Is Zenfolio free, by the way, or I think I may have used that many years ago. Oh, there he says sharing. Yeah. Okay, let's kind of go through them. Last call for questions. And you guys can see we're getting later in the day as well. And so the light's getting easier to work with. These are nice. So usually if you guys hear me commenting on my own work and be like, oh, that's a nice image, it's not me complimenting myself. It's more me saying like, oh, that's a really nice moment between them. That kind of thing. This was a fun job. The lighting was tricky, to be honest. There's a lot of variables at play, and when they work in unison, like sometimes you end up with like some of your best work, and that could be your personal and attitude, energy, etc., whatever you want to call it, you come into the job with. I've come into jobs where I'm on fire, and like from the get-go, and some of it has to do with how easy it is to photograph. Like people are just giving me a lot to work with, the lighting is perfect, or I have the right walls to make my own lighting work for me, that kind of thing. Or sometimes I'm shooting a lot. When I'm working very regularly, I kind of don't require a warm-up period. I actually have a warm-up period creatively. And so if I'm working a lot, I don't need as much of a warm-up. But yeah, sometimes the lighting's perfect. The people are perfect. They're giving you so much. There's so many shots just happening. You're just seeing the shots everywhere you look. And then you end up with excellent work. And you have to accept what's in your control and what's not. And sometimes like you're on fire, or like, but the work is just falling flat to your expectations because maybe the content isn't great. Maybe people aren't giving you much to feed off of, you know? I hope that makes sense. So you guys can see shot to shot, I have very different types of light. So Doug says it's $200 a year for Zenfolio for the pro version. It's nice because the client can see the images and order prints. And so basically, if I'm understanding, it's like Squarespace and SmugMug combined, right? Where you can kind of just have it built into your website ordering prints. I think SmugMug actually does let you create. Some of these are decent images, actually. I'm working really hard this year to get better at. I'm systemizing my editing process so that I'm designating images I like for social media, Squarespace, my Google listing page, all of that stuff, and it's getting designated and exported right away, so that I don't have to go 2 years back, 5 years back every time I want to update my portfolio, because I don't update my portfolio enough. Anyway, what I was saying, SmugMug, I think you can actually build a website off of too, though. Okay. So, well, a lot of questions. Do I provide? No, I provide them all, Alex. Like, that's what I want to do. That's what I like to do. That's what I would like as a client. As a client, I just wouldn't want to be burdened by a lack of culling. Like, I think it's really important. I still find, like, every time you go through your work, you'll find more images as you get less attached to them that you can delete. And the more I go through them, the more I find, right? The first time I go through them, I'm like chopping away, right? It's really easy. But then it becomes about refinement, and you have to go over the gallery several times to really refine. And then also having time away from the images helps you see more clearly what's worth delivering and what's not. But that's a luxury I don't necessarily have. I don't necessarily have the time to the literal time, like waiting 2-3 weeks to look at my work again so I can do a tighter edit, because I need to deliver these. So it's a balancing act, you know. Casa, it's okay. I enjoy your streams because people in your pics are full of life. You can see that they like you. I don't know if they like me. Ideally, they don't notice me. I like them. And I've said in a video before, as a photographer, if you want to capture people in the best light, then you need to be able to see the best in them. And I do. I see beauty in people. When I'm shooting, I see, like, I in a sense, fall in love with my subject matter. I see the most beautiful people in the world. I really do. And so that's important. And so it helps me capture them in the best light. I'm looking for these moments. That's what I'm there to do. That's where if I'm going to stand out for anything, that's what I hope I stand out for with my work, is that I capture natural moments at these emotional highs, you know? That's what, and those are the shots, whether they know it when they hire you or not, that people are going to cherish. Like, even at a wedding, for years everyone thought it was all about the creative portraits, and I was saying, okay, like, I'll do them, but I'm really here to shoot your candids because I know that's the image you're gonna love. That's what I always did. Some more questions. Yeah, I think they had plenty of alcohol there. So Casa says he thinks you can see it in their faces when they don't like the photographer. Fake smiles and some tension, like waiting for him to go away. Yeah. But I think maybe that's if you're shooting like those cocktail hour kind of formal type shots. If you're getting candids, even if they're like, there's a candid moment, but then they make eye contact because they catch you photographing them, they're not going to like turn it off because they're like, oh, it's that stupid photographer. But when you're working with people, you want them to like you. You need to build rapport quickly with them. And there's a lot. That's a whole subject. We're, we're almost. I've never actually. I don't think I've gone this long. And I almost want to go for another 9 minutes just to make it 2 hours, because I haven't done a stream that long. And why not? But yeah, it does show, I think. People need to feel comfortable with you, and there's a lot you can do. Making eye contact, shooting with both eyes open, smiling. People, whether they want to or not, if you smile, like if I smile right now and you're watching this, you might be smiling. It's human nature, That's what we do. Like, we mirror. And if it's genuine, and it usually is because I have a good time doing what I do, they'll smile back. Look at Dad, like, stopping to look at his phone. Thank you, Aman. I appreciate that. I'm too lazy to switch platforms myself, Mark, because it's so much work. I feel like there's always a mountain of work to do, and that would be too much for me. But I am looking to make a big change on my website in order to incorporate more like written content. I don't like. I'm using Squarespace because I had a vision of what I wanted my website to look like when I redid it years ago, and then I realized Squarespace already offers a template for that. I don't need to invent one, and so I switched. Cost more money than just using my WordPress one, which was basically paid for, but it was worth it to me. The easiness of it. But the current theme I'm using has issues where I'm not able to really do what I want to do with it. All right, we're almost at the end here. Possible I could have pulled down the highlights in this particular shot. Casa says the comfort and psychology is the most interesting thing for me in photography, getting people to open up, etc. The good pics will come almost automatically once you're there. Yeah, it is in a huge portion of photography, and I say anyone can learn the technical stuff, but we all learn it at a different pace. I've had some really incredible photography students, just brilliant artists that struggled with the technical stuff, but even eventually they learn it, and then when they do learn it, they had what you can't learn quite as well. Just like a creative mind and an ability to work with people. Like I have one particular student who has a way of connecting with people so incredibly well. People just open up to her and are so comfortable with being photographed by her. But she struggled with the whole digital photography thing. Like she's a little bit older, and that part's been a struggle for her, but she had the unlearnable parts, and that doesn't mean you can't learn it. You can learn to be better with people, but so much of that comes down to personality traits, I think. And so that's the most important thing that people don't really understand about photography, because I think a lot of photography forums are dominated by people that own a Leica and barely actually make images and love to talk about all the technical stuff about photography, but they miss the point. I'm generalizing myself, but I already don't know which mom-daughter pick because of the lag, but people watching know which one. probably pulled the shadows up here, but didn't here. Also, it looks like my lens hood got locked. Maybe in the crowd it got kind of clipped, and it's not. I believe that's what we're looking at in the top right somehow. I'm not sure though. And here's an image where, again, if I had all the time in the world, I probably would have cropped in here and done something like that. But again, as always, balancing my edit time. Oh, wait. Hang on a second. Is that the same image cropped? I can't tell because I think this is actually the same image. No, it's not. So one I did crop and one I just decided to leave because I had two similar shots, I guess. But I should have done some cropping here too. You think it was an arm? I can go back and take a closer look. I'm talking about that right there. It could have been. I mean, I think I was ducking a little bit low. It could have been something, but I think it's the lens hood, if you're referring to that right there. Hey, 2 minutes and I'm at 3 hours. I did it. Or 2 hours. I did it. Some more extra detail shots because it was put out kind of late. Okay, so I hope you guys enjoyed this live stream. If there's any questions that come in as I'm talking, I will answer them before we go. I want to thank you guys all for coming and checking out the stream. I really appreciate it. Hey, 17 watching now. That's one away from my record. I need to do better on my part of scheduling these in advance so that you guys know when they're coming and what we will be covering in each one, because I don't always want to just do like a job review. I want to do critiques. I want to talk about different aspects of the photography business. I am still kind of letting it simmer in my mind how I want to approach talking about marketing, how I can best cover that in a live stream, or if it would just make a better video anyway. I actually prefer making these live streams compared to making the videos, but they get fewer views, and what's the point, of doing something if it's not reaching people, even if I really enjoy it. What happens is the live streams get a decent amount watching. I love the interactions, but then it goes into a black hole with the YouTube algorithm. I think they think things are less relevant if it was live, and now it's not. You can always watch from the beginning. All my live streams are still on my channel. You can go back and watch any of them. I know it's probably less fun when it's not live. So Monday, what I'm going to do is I am going to schedule that live edit where you guys are going to see me kind of edit a job. I might not edit to completion because there's no point in me editing the job because it's already been delivered. Like I said earlier, the JPEGs were delivered because it was a shoot and scoot type of job. But I'm going to do an edit and talk you guys through what I'm usually doing, and you'll see the actual corrections I make. I'll have to do a screen share so you can see the tabs on Lightroom because they don't show up when you do a window share with the software I use. But hey, hit my record. I have 19 watching. That's my new record. Someone that likes me probably just opened it in a second browser though. It's probably my mom. I'm Monique. Yeah, you did it. I'm almost at 20 now. That would be a new record for me. So this has been fun. I really enjoy doing this. So it's tricky trying to say a percentage of why you do something, right? Obviously, I do this out of some self-interest, but the motivating factor is I really enjoy helping people. So when you guys give me your feedback, I really do appreciate it. If you guys want to support this channel, there's ways you can do that. You can buy me a cup of coffee on PayPal. I have a Patreon page if you want to support me in an ongoing way. On Patreon, my goal is I want to be able, I don't want to just say, hey, oh, you like the content I produce that's free already and you want to give me money? I'll take it. Give me your money. That's not what I want to do. I really want to make my Patreon page a way of me helping you guys. So with critiques, with business coaching, that kind of thing. And so I don't want to do what other people have done with Patreon where they're just taking. And that's fine. I think that's awesome. Like if people want to, even though it's free content, if they want to support you for making that free content, I get. But I want to be able to offer levels that really support you guys rather than it being about, hey, just support me, that kind of thing. But as always, just watching my videos, to me, it's enough support. I appreciate it. And I started this channel because I wanted to help people, because nobody helped me when I started. There wasn't anyone on YouTube teaching me how to do photography. YouTube wasn't what it is now. And there definitely weren't event photography videos because I'm still the only person I can find talking about event photography specifically. There's only one-off videos that I'm able to find. And that's too bad. Like, you know, that's too bad. It's there's a lot of event photography work. It's just kind of like the thing people forget about. When they start off as photographers, they all want to be like maybe fashion photographers, or they love weddings and that kind of thing. But I transitioned into events because I actually prefer them to just about anything. It gives me an opportunity to capture moments, and that's what I care about. I care about people and capturing real moments, those like energetic, emotional moments, that kind of thing. I don't like landscape. I don't like detail shots, but it's part of the job. I'm not into fashion. I used to think I hated weddings. I actually don't. I actually kind of like them. They're just events. But there's too much of an industry pushing people to do things a certain way, where a younger, idealistic 20-something-year-old Mick was like found resentful. Let me just catch up on comments, and then we'll wind it, and then I'll say goodbye. Thank you, Mick. Had to come in late because of another live stream. French time. Always nice to come listening to you, full of precious content. Casa says, I know, will do. Not sure what you're referring to. You can make a video from your live videos. I don't know if you're making a joke or if what you mean is I basically use highlights from them, but I've been thinking about using these live videos, rewatching them. I hate watching myself, but rewatching them and then distilling the content, all the ideas in it, into a more like consumable form, something like a 4 or 5 minute typical YouTube video. So that's one thing I've thought about. Alex says your mom, I think she might be referring to like opening multiple browsers, or maybe who knows. Mark popped in today since my business, like all photographers, is paused. Yeah, good couple of hours spent. Thanks, Mick and group. Yeah, that's the other thing I really like about these live streams. I think we all need a bit of community right now, and I don't know if it's just not popular. Event photography isn't really like what people have in mind when they start shooting, I don't think. Monique, appreciate your videos. I appreciate you. Thank you. I was burnt out in the fashion world as a photoshopper, the thing I never wanted to do again. I might like it. I'm weird. I don't cross passions ever. Like, you'd think I in high school I was a big skater, which I'm like started up again. Like, it's really funny. Like, I'm rediscovering this passion I had before I had photography, and then before I had jiu-jitsu. I'm skating again. But when I went from skating and then started getting really into photography, I never thought to photograph skating. It never occurred to me. Or I don't really photograph jiu-jitsu tournaments, and I might actually like fashion because I don't care about fashion, But I can appreciate it, actually. The more you learn and understand something, the more you appreciate it. So for example, I've used this as an example. I don't like violence. I don't like blood, but I like watching. I don't follow it. I don't keep up with it, but I like watching mixed martial arts because I do jujitsu. I get what's going on. I understand the mental game that's being played, so I appreciate it. And so I appreciate fashion in that sense, and I can see some value in it, even if I'm not interested in like my personal fashion. Other comments. I love your channel and your work exactly for that reason. Candids are truly what matters most. Thank you very much for these live streams. So it's like comments like that is why I keep doing it. I know I just keep doing it for like 10 of you guys, but it's okay. It's more important than just getting like massive subscriber bases where people don't really care, you know, because you make like photography hack videos. They don't care. They're just watching for entertainment. Sometimes you point out a very good point, and which is coming out of a discussion. I'm still waiting to get my first paid event job, but watching how you work gives amazing tips and also gives you more confidence in what I'm doing. Yeah, so I'm starting to realize this can be a substitute to what I had as an opportunity, and that is I was a second photographer for. Well, I mean, like, I basically started taking jobs on my own right away, but really I was second shooting mostly for the first few years as a photographer. And that's how I kind of saw, you know, like, what's the expression? Blanking on it, but, you know, how it was like my access to getting into the kitchen and seeing how the food was made by second shooting. But if you've never second shot and you have this idea, I want to be an event photographer, how are you going to learn the trade? How are you going to learn what the expectations are and that kind of thing? Second shooting for me gave me a foundation of what the job entailed. It also helped me figure out what I wanted to do and what I did not want to do. I don't do everything the same as the person I second shot for, but they gave me a foundation that I could build off of and make my own. So I'm glad these are helping. Casa, fashion was never a passion. I just worked for a fashion photographer, but always hated the fake plastic world anyway. No loss. Yeah. I've evolved on my own personal opinion on fashion. I get it. I don't express myself with how I dress. That's just not how I choose. But some people do, and I get that. What I kind of falsely equated fashion with luxury, and fashion was just about look how much I can spend on my outfit, and that's not really true. And also the industry has evolved a bit from that, I think. But yeah. Keep up the great work. Thank you. Quick point, just noticed I did not have the bell on. Yeah, if you guys want to be alerted, make sure you have the bell on my channel on. You'll get alerted to any time I live stream that way, because I haven't completely settled on a day, because I was doing it every day, so you guys knew at 10:15 I'd be live streaming. But I think I'm going to settle into doing Monday and Friday, and maybe eventually just Friday or just Monday, but I'm not sure at this point. But I will let you guys know. Also, you're more likely to see like I do like channel update stuff on the community tab. That probably gets filtered out, but if you're a subscriber and you click the bell, you're more likely to see them. So keep that in mind. All right. Appreciate all of you guys. I'm gonna call it. I actually did 2 hours and 10 minutes, but this was a good one. I really enjoyed it. I enjoyed sharing work with you guys. Look forward to Monday, in which I will be live streaming again, and I will eventually post a schedule. Again, like, subscribe, make sure you're hitting the bell, and then you'll be alerted to when I do channel updates. All right, guys. Again, appreciate you.